AITA for calling my family to the renovation site after the contractor's discovery? I am Harper Sloan. A year after my grandparents passed away, one suddenly and the other after a long battle with cancer, I decided to renovate their old wooden house in Asheville to put it on the market. I was driving up the winding mountain road to check on the progress when my phone rang. It was Derek Malloy, the contractor I had hired. His voice was low and tense. "Mrs. Sloan, we just broke through a false wall in the attic and found a locked digital box hidden behind it. Your sister Sienna Sloan's name is engraved on the top. You need to come as soon as possible, but please do not come alone. Call your parents and your sister and have them meet you here." My stomach dropped. I pulled over on the narrow street, my hands trembling as I dialed everyone, telling them only that an urgent issue had come up with Grandma's house and to meet me there immediately. When we arrived and gathered in the dusty attic, surrounded by sawdust and tools, we stood around the small black box lying on the floor. No one spoke. The air felt thick, almost suffocating. Whatever was inside was not just a forgotten memento. In that moment, seeing my sister's name etched into the lid, I knew that what we were about to find would completely upend everything I thought I knew about my family. I still get chills thinking about that instant. The old A-frame house stood on a mountainside just outside of Asheville, North Carolina, surrounded by tall pines that swayed in the wind nearly year-round. As children, my younger sister Sienna and I spent every summer there with our grandparents. We would race up the steep wooden stairs to the attic, turning it into our secret clubhouse, with old blankets draped over the rafters to make forts and flashlights for late-night storytelling sessions that lasted until Grandma called us for dinner. The large triangular windows gave us panoramic views of the Blue Ridge Mountains stretching out endlessly, and on clear days we could spot hawks circling high above or watch storms roll in from miles away. Winter visits felt cozier. We would all gather around the stone fireplace downstairs, roasting marshmallows on long forks while Grandpa retold his favorite stories of fishing in the nearby creeks, exaggerating the size of the trout each time. Grandma Marjorie used to sit in her worn armchair, either knitting scarves or quietly reviewing client folders with her reading glasses perched on the tip of her nose. She was a financial advisor for retirees, one of those people who help seniors manage trusts, annuities, and estate planning to protect their life savings. She often met with clients right in the house, using the small study off the living room as her workspace. I would sometimes peek in and see her explaining complex forms in simple language, making sure widows or retirees understood every detail before signing anything. In her final years, our father, Gordon, started visiting more frequently. He would arrive unannounced and pull her aside for private chats about investment ideas or specific client situations. His voice remained smooth and charming, but I noticed how his eyes sharpened when she mentioned certain accounts or portfolios. She would quickly change the subject, reminding him of confidentiality rules, though he pushed a little harder each time. The attic changed during those last years. Suddenly, the door was secured with a new deadbolt that no one remembered installing. Sienna and I were in our 20s and visiting less often, so we did not question it much. We assumed Grandma needed privacy as her health declined, or wanted to store medical equipment up there without us grandkids tripping over it. Grandpa's sudden heart attack hit us all hard when I was 28. He was gone in an instant without warning. Grandma battled the cancer diagnosis that followed for another full year, determined to remain independent in the house she loved. Her frailty grew as she spent hours in that same armchair by the fire, but her mind stayed sharp. She managed her own affairs until the very end, updating her will to leave the property directly to Sienna and me, with no complicated trusts since we were adults and her only direct heirs under North Carolina probate laws. Sienna clung to the idea of preserving the place exactly as Grandma left it, a shrine to our childhood summers and holiday gatherings. She has always been the more sentimental one, keeping boxes of old letters and Christmas ornaments as if they were sacred. But reality set in quickly. The house was sitting empty, accumulating taxes and maintenance costs we could not ignore. I had built a solid career in marketing in Charlotte, a 3-hour drive southeast through the mountains, and was saving for my own financial stability. Sienna, a preschool teacher near Asheville, faced a tougher life after her divorce as a single mom on a modest salary, renting a cramped apartment where she and her son barely fit. Letting the property decay felt irresponsible. I pushed for renovating it, loving the idea of turning it into a modern, airy space with skylights and polished beams to attract buyers looking for that rustic chic vibe popular in the area. Selling would split the profit evenly, giving her breathing room to pay off debt or put a down payment on a small house, and giving me a boost toward my own goals. That is how Derek Malloy's crew got the job. His company specializes in mountain homes with sloped ceilings, moisture damage, and those tricky A-frame angles that regular contractors mess up. We initially walked through the house together, outlining priorities, starting with the attic to maximize its impact on the property's value. The crew began a few weeks earlier, stripping old paneling and prepping for new drywall. During that visit, I saw Grandma's armchair still tucked in the attic corner. Its fabric faded but intact. The side drawers showed faint primer marks around the hardware, scratches that were not there before. She once casually mentioned misplacing some unimportant papers during the side effects of her treatment and brushed it off when I asked. It seemed like a minor thing then, just a quirk of her declining health. Driving up the mountain that morning for a routine check-in, excitement mixed with bittersweet feelings. The house embodied both joy and loss, intertwining lazy summer days chasing fireflies, Thanksgiving dinners with extended family, and quiet evenings listening to records on Grandpa's old player. Renovating meant erasing some of those footprints, but leaving it vacant honored no one. Sienna had reluctantly agreed, understanding the finances. Practicality won out. I wish I had known the crew's work would uncover far more than structural issues or cosmetic fixes. I could not wait for the others. As soon as Derek hung up, I floored it the rest of the way up the mountain, hugging the tight curves as leaves blurred past my windows. My mind raced faster than the car. Why was my sister's name on a hidden box? Why the urgency in his voice? Why insist on bringing the whole family? By the time I reached the gravel driveway, the crew had already cleared the attic to give me space. Derek met me at the bottom of the stairs, handed me gloves, and pointed upward without a word. Dust motes hung in the slanted light pouring through the triangular windows, and sawdust crunched under my boots as I climbed up alone. The box rested on a tarp in the middle of the exposed joists, matte black with a small digital keypad glowing faintly. It looked like an expensive, out-of-place object among the rough pine and insulation scraps. Derek had wiped it clean, revealing the engraving Sienna Sloan on the lid in simple, capital letters, with no date or any other markings. My hands shook as I knelt beside it. Digital safes like these often lock out after 3 failed attempts, sometimes permanently erasing the contents. A standard security feature to protect sensitive documents. I knew my grandmother had upgraded her home security in recent years, citing fears of identity theft among her elderly clients. First, I tried her birthday. Beep red light. Second, I tried Grandpa's birthday. Another denial. My pulse pounded in my ears. One more wrong code and I could wipe everything forever. I closed my eyes, picturing her at the kitchen table, entering passwords on her tablet, always reusing important dates so she would not forget during the chemo fog. Then I remembered their wedding anniversary, the one she celebrated every year with the same yellow roses sent to the house. I entered the numbers slowly. Green light. A soft click. The lid popped open. Inside lay a single dense cream-colored envelope, her favorite stationery from the local craft store in downtown Asheville, and a folded note on white cardstock. No USB drives or stack of files, just handwriting I would recognize anywhere. The envelope was addressed simply to Harper and Sienna, to be opened only if I am gone. The seal was slightly yellowed, the adhesive tape brittle with age. I sat cross-legged on the cold plywood, the wind whistling through gaps in the unfinished walls, and carefully opened it. The letter spanned 3 pages in her distinct, neat cursive, though it grew shakier toward the end. The ink smudged occasionally, as if written in bursts between doses of pain medication. My dearest granddaughters, if you are reading this, I did not make it long enough to handle this myself. I have suspected for months that your father, Gordon, has been doing something terribly wrong with some of my clients' retirement funds. It started with small, strange questions about accounts, him pushing for introductions to wealthier seniors. Then discrepancies appeared in statements I reviewed for my friends. Money was moving in ways that did not add up, always through entities I could not quickly trace. Worst of all, every suspicious transaction I have found so far ties back to information available only under Sienna's name. Her social security number, old addresses, even forged signatures that look disturbingly like hers. I do not have irrefutable proof of the full extent of it yet, or how he is managing it, but the pattern is so clear it terrifies me. If authorities ever investigate, Sienna would be the first person flagged, as everything points to her identity. I have been collecting what I can. Printed statements, call logs, and bank alerts, but my strength is fading faster than I expected. The second sheet holds the login details for a secure cloud folder where I have uploaded copies. A colleague is helping me keep it updated when I cannot. Use it carefully. Please, whatever you do, protect your sister. Do not let her take the blame for something she knows nothing about. I wanted to confront Gordon directly, to force the truth from him, but the cancer beat me to it. I am so sorry I could not finish this for you both. With all my love, forever, Grandma Marjorie. The words blurred as tears welled up. She had carried this alone, protecting us while her body failed her. Guilt, anger, and confusion swirled together. How long had she known? Why had she not told me sooner? What exactly had Dad done? The wind picked up outside, rattling loose shingles on the roof, mirroring the storm raging inside me. I folded the letter carefully, slipped the cloud credentials into my pocket, and sat there on the dusty floor, staring at the empty box that had just shattered the foundation of everything I thought I understood about our family. The drive back to Charlotte felt endless. Mountain roads gave way to interstate traffic as evening fell. My mind replayed Grandma's words over and over. The shaky script, the unfinished suspicions, the plea to protect Sienna. By the time I unlocked my uptown high-rise apartment door, exhaustion mixing with dread, I dropped the letter on the kitchen counter, poured a glass of water, and opened my laptop. The cloud login credentials stared back at me from the folded note, a simple URL and a password combining their wedding anniversary with a phrase she always used for secure files. SafeNest 1958. Logging in took seconds. The dashboard loaded slowly, a basic service she had likely set up with help. Nothing sophisticated, just one folder labeled, for family review. There was no pristine organization here. Files were scattered, as if uploaded in a rush between doctor's appointments and periods of rest. Several were corrupted videos, cutting off mid-sentence, pixelated from trembling hands or poor lighting. Clearly, her illness had made the process grueling. The chemo sessions left her too weak for long technical sessions. The first folder contained scanned handwritten notes from client meetings. Pages dated over the last 3 years showed her meticulous style. Client names, retirement amounts, and investment types. But red flags she had circled noted certain accounts missing from her official records, with cross-references to online banking portals she had accessed. One entry noted a widow's $500,000 in savings had been transferred to an unknown LLC. Another mentioned a retired couple's annuity being cashed out prematurely, with funds redirected to a shell account. Deeper in, blurry bank screenshots appeared, taken with a phone in dark rooms, transfers traced to accounts bearing Sienna's full name and social security number, forged signatures visible even in low resolution. Her maiden name was misspelled on one, like a careless attempt. The pattern emerged, with small diversions at first that grew larger over time. Grandma had annotated a few with scanned sticky notes. Why did client deny authorizing? Sienna's info used again. The audio files were short, time-stamped recordings of video calls from her last few months. Janet, her longtime colleague at the downtown financial advisory firm, must have guided the setup. The files used a secure app for remote recording, likely to avoid detection. I clicked on the first one. Grandma appeared on screen, pale and frail in her hospital bed set up at home. Her voice was weak but inquisitive. Gordon, about Mrs. Malloy's account, the one you recommended to her son. She says the funds vanished. Explain it to me again. Dad's face filled the other half, his office background with its golfing trophies behind him. He laughed it off at first. Mom, are you mixing things up with the medication? I just advised her on diversification. But she persisted, feigning confusion from the painkillers. The routing shows Sienna's data. Why her social security number? He hesitated, then snapped. It is nothing, just a provisional account for routing. You do not need to know. The call cut off abruptly. Incomplete file. Another recording weeks later had Grandma listing specific transfers. Dad grew defensive. Those clients trusted me through you. It is business. A pause. Then his voice dropped. Sienna's information was a clean, convenient file. No questions asked. Grandma's sigh filled the speaker. He did not confess outright, but the evasions painted a picture. He had exploited his client's trust. He had siphoned retirement savings meant for elder care or medical funds, hiding the trail under Sienna's identity to deflect blame if caught. Under federal laws like the Elder Justice Act, identity theft and financial fraud carries severe penalties, especially against seniors, up to 20 years if proven systematic. I pieced it together myself where the files broke off, cross-referencing dates with public record searches on my phone. One victim, a retired schoolteacher, lost her entire pension fund. Another, a veteran, lost his VA disability supplement. All tied back to Dad's consulting side work he had bragged about at family dinners. The emotional weight was heavy. Grandma compiling this alone. Her advisor's ethics clashing with a mother's instinct to avoid accusing her own son without irrefutable proof. North Carolina law, which mandated professionals like her to report elder abuse, required suspected exploitation to be flagged, but family ties complicated it. False reports could backfire legally. With my eyes burning under the screen's glare near midnight, the betrayal crystallized. Dad had not just made a mistake. He had systematically used his mother's network, forging paths that pointed directly at Sienna. The incomplete files frustrated me. Missing links in transaction chains, distorted audio from bad connections. But there was still enough to demand action. Janet's involvement now made sense. She had likely taught my grandmother about secure backups, knowing the risks of digital trails under privacy laws like HIPAA for health-related finances. I shut the laptop, pacing my small living room with the streetlights flickering through the blinds. The pieces fit too precisely, too cruelly. Tomorrow I would call Janet for clarification, but tonight, the truth settled like a thunderclap. Our family harbored a secret destroyer. I texted Sienna that morning, asking to meet at the small independent coffee shop on Patton Avenue in downtown Asheville, the one with mismatched chairs and strong espresso we had loved since college. She replied quickly, suggesting lunchtime, as her preschool shift ended early. Driving back from Charlotte, the familiar route over the Swannanoa Gap felt heavier this time, closing the distance between suspicion and confrontation. Sienna arrived first, already seated at a corner table with 2 lattes waiting. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes from juggling teaching and single parenting, but she smiled when she saw me. We hugged longer than usual, that lingering embrace when something unspoken hangs in the air. I did not waste time once we sat down. I pulled out my phone and showed her screenshots from the cloud folder. The falsified account statements with her name, the transfer trails leading away from elderly clients Grandma had trusted. Her face went pale as she scrolled. First she was in denial. This cannot be right, Harper. Someone hacked my information or something. Then confusion as she flicked through the images faster. I let her process, my own drink untouched while she pieced it together. Slowly memories surfaced. Wait, those weird letters from the bank I got years ago, asking for verification on accounts I never opened. I thought they were scams and shredded them. She paused on a blurry scan of a signature. And those emails during the divorce. My ex showed me printouts accusing me of hiding money. He said my credit was ruined by secret debts. I swore it was not me. The more she talked, the clearer it became. Dad had timed everything perfectly, opening credit lines in her name just as her marriage grew strained, maxing out cards she never owned and tanking her credit score. It prevented her from getting loans for a bigger house or a car. Her ex, convinced she had lied about their finances, left, citing irresponsibility. Child support battles dragged on because judges saw delinquent accounts on her history. Even job offers fell through after background checks triggered fraud alerts tied to her social security number. Sienna's hands were shaking as she held the phone, shock turning into something harder. All this time I blamed myself for bad choices and mismanaging money. Turns out someone was deliberately sabotaging me. Her voice cracked, anger rising. We paid the bill and left, thinking some fresh air might help. Instead of heading home, I suggested a detour. One victim's name stood out in Grandma's notes. Mrs. Lorraine Whitaker, 83, a widowed school principal who had lost nearly $400,000 meant for her grandchildren's college funds. The assisted living center was on the outskirts of town, a low brick building with manicured gardens, popular among Asheville retirees. We signed in at the front desk, explaining we were relatives of a former advisor looking to follow up on her financial affairs. The staff led us to a sunny common room where Mrs. Whitaker was sitting by a window, knitting a scarf despite fingers swollen with arthritis. She greeted us warmly, her eyes lighting up when I mentioned Grandma Marjorie. Such a thoughtful lady. Always looked out for us old folks. I gently broached the subject, showing her printed summaries, careful not to overwhelm her. Her expression darkened as she recalled meetings with an advisor Grandma had recommended, a polite man in his 50s, a sharp dresser who promised higher returns on conservative investments. He used the name Charles Bennett, said he was a partner at your grandmother's firm. Several visits, signed forms, transferred funds, then silent statements showing a zero balance. I called Marjorie in a panic, she said. She promised to look into it, but then her health declined. I never got the money back. I had to scale back my dreams for the grandkids. When I asked if she had ever dealt directly with a Sienna, she shook her head firmly. Never met or spoke to anyone by that name. All contact was through Mr. Bennett. The confirmation hit Sienna like a wave. She gripped my hand under the table, her knuckles white. Mrs. Whitaker's story matched the files exactly. The same amounts, the same timeline, the same false promises. Leaving the center, Sienna walked with a straighter posture, fury replacing self-doubt. Years of scraping by, of justifying her failures to friends, of doubting her own competence, all of it orchestrated. In the parking lot, she turned to me. We cannot let him get away with this. Whatever it takes. The next morning, I dialed the number listed on one of Grandma's cloud notes, my heart pounding. A warm but cautious voice answered. It was Janet. I introduced myself as Marjorie's granddaughter, mentioned the hidden files, and asked if she had time to talk. She paused, then suggested we meet in person. These things are better face to face. We arranged to meet at her office in downtown Asheville that afternoon. The small financial planning suite she had once shared with my grandmother years ago. Janet met me at the door, her silver hair pulled back, her eyes sharp behind rimless glasses. She led me to a quiet conference room overlooking the Blue Ridge Parkway traffic. Coffee steamed between us as I laid out printed summaries, carefully curated, avoiding full victim names to protect their privacy as per federal guidelines. Her expression tightened as she read the notes. Marjorie told me bits and pieces, she said quietly. We argued heatedly about it. I urged her to go straight to the authorities. Financial exploitation of seniors is a crime that advisors are mandated to report under state and SEC rules. But she refused, terrified that any premature action would backfire on Sienna. Janet explained their heated exchanges. My grandmother insisted on more evidence to avoid false accusations against her family, while Janet argued that delays risked more victims losing their life savings. She wanted an airtight case so investigators would see the frame-up immediately. Identity theft layered on top of fraud makes the innocent party, her sister, the initial suspect in many investigations. Janet had helped her set up the cloud account precisely for secure backups, teaching Grandma basic encryption tools during lunch breaks. I knew her health was failing. We were racing against the clock, she said, leaning forward. You are doing the right thing. I still consult on cases with a special agent at the IRS who specializes in elder fraud, Agent Nolan Reeves. He has handled similar identity theft rings that targeted retirement assets. With my permission, she called him directly, putting the phone on speaker. Reeves's voice came through, calm and professional. Cases Mrs. Coe refers to me are always solid. Send what you have through our secure portal. I will review it tonight. Uploading the intact files from home that evening felt surreal. Bank trails, audio clips, handwritten lists, now in official hands. Reeves called back quickly. The evidence impressed him. Clear patterns of unauthorized transfers totaling over $1.8 million across 6 victims, all funneled through accounts using Sienna's credentials. Strong for a prosecution, he said. But the framing is sophisticated. Without careful presentation, standard protocols flag the name holder first. Your sister could face subpoenas or asset freezes before we can pinpoint the real perpetrator. He explained the risks under federal wire fraud laws. If Dad claimed ignorance or blamed everything on forged documents, Sienna's simple denial might not hold up initially without his direct admission. We need him on record acknowledging control. Reeves suggested a family meeting in a controlled setting where conversations could be legally recorded under North Carolina's one-party consent law for felony investigations. No warrant needed if I hosted and consented. Janet joined the follow-up call to brainstorm logistics. The house in Asheville offered neutral ground, tied to Grandma's estate for plausible cover. We drafted the invitation as a group text, claiming the workers found additional paperwork in the attic, old trust amendments that required signatures to finalize the estate distribution. The probate process in North Carolina can be lengthy with unsigned addendums, lending credibility to the excuse. Mom and Dad would drive in from their suburb outside Charlotte. Sienna lived close enough for a day trip. Reeves coached me on subtlety. Keep the conversation naturally guided toward Grandma's client concerns without badgering. Let Dad fill the silences. Backup audio via my phone in plain sight. No hidden devices to avoid wiretapping laws. Agents would monitor remotely, ready to intervene if escalation required safety protocols. The plan crystallized over a few hours. Arrive early, set seating for clear recording, have escape phrases ready. The tension mounted. Hanging up, relief mixed with nerves. Janet squeezed my arm. Marjorie would be proud you are finishing what she started. I felt an immense weight. Justice for the victims, protection for Sienna, confrontation with the man who raised me. But delaying was not an option. More time meant more risk of Dad erasing his tracks. The weekend arrived with crisp mountain air and clear skies, perfect for the drive from Charlotte. Mom and Dad got there first, their SUV loaded with luggage since they decided to stay over rather than drive back the same day. Sienna pulled up shortly after, parking her old sedan next to the gravel path. We gathered in the living room, sunlight streaming through the large windows onto the stone fireplace that had not been lit in years. I placed my laptop on the coffee table screen facing everyone, with my phone nearby as an audio backup, legally sound since I was a participant and consented. The conversation started with small talk. Updates on work, Sienna's preschool class, Mom's garden club. Dad steered it toward the house sale, asking about offers and timelines. I transitioned smoothly. Before we get to numbers, there is something from Grandma's files the contractors uncovered. It is about her old clients. I opened the compiled audio playlist, keeping the volume moderate so the words were clear. The first clip played Grandma's weak voice questioning the irregular transfers. Dad dismissed it, calling it market fluctuations. His face on the couch tightened, but he forced a laugh. That is out of context. Mom was on a lot of medication toward the end. Hallucinations and confusion, we all saw it. Mom nodded beside him, taking his hand. Let's not dig up painful memories. Your grandmother would not want us to fight. I moved on to the next segment. Bank account access details related to Sienna's credentials. This time I played the clip where Dad called her information a clean, convenient file. The silence that followed was heavy. Sienna, who had been quiet until now, stood up, her hands clenched. Convenient? My life fell apart because of you. My marriage, my credit, my ability to give my son a stable home. Was all of that convenient for you, Dad? Her voice, trembling with years of pent-up pain, cut through the room. Dad's composure finally cracked. He jumped to his feet, pointing a finger at her. You have no idea what you are talking about. I did what I had to do. You were always struggling, always needing something. I was building a future. By ruining mine? Sienna shot back, tears streaming down her face. By using me? Mom stood between them, pleading. Gordon, stop. Sienna, honey, sit down. We can sort this out as a family. But I knew we were past that. I held up a printed sheet of paper. What about Charles Bennett? Is that part of the family business too? Dad's face went white. He stared at the name, then at me, his eyes wide with panic. How do you know that name? Mrs. Whitaker told us, I said calmly. She remembers him very well. She also remembers losing her life savings. Cornered, Dad finally broke. He sank back onto the couch, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. Those old folks were sitting on piles of money they would never use. It was just sitting there. I put it to work. It was supposed to be a temporary loan, an investment. It was the admission agent Reeves had been waiting for. Just then, a sharp knock echoed through the house. I opened the door to find Agent Reeves and 2 local police officers standing on the porch. He nodded at me professionally before stepping inside. "Gordon Sloan, you are under arrest for federal wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and financial exploitation of the elderly." Mom let out a cry as the officers read him his rights and placed him in handcuffs. She turned on me, her face contorted with anger. "Are you happy now, Harper? You have destroyed this family." Sienna stood frozen, watching the man who raised her being led away. There was no triumph in her expression, only a profound and hollow sadness. The house that held all our childhood memories had just become the scene of its undoing. 6 months later, the legal process was ongoing. Dad had taken a plea deal to avoid a lengthy trial, agreeing to cooperate in recovering as much of the stolen money as possible. A court-appointed receiver was liquidating his assets to create a restitution fund for the victims. It would not be enough to make them whole, but it was a start. Sienna was slowly rebuilding. With legal help, she was clearing her name with the credit bureaus and had filed a civil suit to recover damages. The cloud of financial ruin that had followed her for years was finally beginning to lift. Our relationship with our mother remained deeply fractured. She visited Dad in jail and spoke to us only through terse, accusatory text messages. We decided to sell the Asheville house. The memories were too heavy now, tainted by the secrets unearthed in the attic. The sale closed on a bright autumn day. After signing the final papers, Sienna and I drove up one last time to walk through the empty rooms. The renovations were complete, the space clean and full of light, ready for a new family to make their own memories. Standing on the porch overlooking the Blue Ridge Mountains, Sienna squeezed my hand. "Grandma would be proud of you, you know. You finished what she started." I leaned my head on her shoulder, the crisp mountain air feeling clean and new. "She would be proud of us," I corrected her. The path forward was uncertain, but for the first time in a very long time, we were facing it together, free from the weight of the past. Comment. I find that stories like this often circle back to a simple but difficult truth. You can hold space for compassion while still drawing a firm line to protect your own safety. Respecting yourself sometimes means making a choice that others will not understand. That is not an act of selfishness, but an act of profound self-preservation. Real healing begins the moment we stop accepting what harms us. We are not responsible for the actions of others, even those we love dearly. We are, however, responsible for nurturing our own well-being and integrity. True peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice and self-worth. I hope you always find the courage to choose the path that honors your own story. Remember to be kind to yourself on that journey. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.